Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Hofane. And this is the leadership series with Botswana Insurance Company. And I'm with my very good friend who you've been seeing the past couple of episodes, NJ.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm very good.
I know you're great because we're talking about something you're very passionate about.
Yes, indeed.
African leadership, all things Africa, leadership-wise.
Yes.
You mentioned in our previous episode how legendary leaders like your Nelson Mandelas, your Desmond Tutus, and so on have been influential globally. What is it about their leadership style that we can learn, and what principles can we learn and adopt in our own businesses or organizations?
I think to me, when you look at the Nelson Mandela story and how he conducted himself, it's about the servant leadership. It's about not serving the self but others. It's about being concerned about the people you lead, and genuinely so that people really understand this moral integrity that we have, and worried about their safety, their concerns, and their social development, their economic development. That was typical of Nelson Mandela. I think during his time, there was less of blatant corruption that we see now in a lot of African countries. There was much less of negativity in terms of corruption and people's resources going into the wrong places. So the key things for me there is, during the Nelson Mandela era, is really working for the people, serving the people as a servant of the people. You're leading from the front, but basically everything that you do, sort of like, demonstrate to the people that I'm there for you and I'm working, I'm your employee, though you're a leader to them. I think we've seen a little bit of the reverse of that now with a lot of greedy African leaders, where people now think about their pockets, people think about how do I enrich my relatives. I think we sort of like fail to understand that the more people are doing well, the better for everyone, the better for the whole continent. The few people, when the few people do well, this is a breeding ground for wars, civil wars, fights, instability in various countries, as you see now in Africa with various troublesome spots, because some people think that other people are eating and they're hungry, and that creates that disparity that then causes or forces people to go into other mode of defense, which is basically fighting governments in place. So I think as soon as our leaders realize that there's enough resources, we need to look at the value chain and make sure that we don't export our resources raw into the Western world. Try and process some of these resources or natural resources, I mean minerals, locally in our various nations, and only export them out of Africa when there's really a need, or when they've been processed, then they can bring in more forex to Africa. Then you'll find that we'll not be needing to fight and to be corrupt about anything, because there's enough for everyone. But unfortunately, we have very greedy leaders sometimes in Africa, to the extent that then, it destroys the value that we're supposed to be creating, but we actually end up destroying it. Yes.
And when you look at how leaders are, especially, I think what had surprised me really was during COVID, was how countries like even Zimbabwe and Botswana were really leading with vaccinations and so on. Is that something that had surprised you, that wow, we're seeing a lot of leaders emerging? I know the president of South Africa had recently spoken out on behalf of a lot of African countries to say that, hey, I know that during COVID we were seemingly begging for vaccinations and so on, but we can still stand on our own. So are you seeing that as a trend now, specifically with globally?
Yeah, I think we have some very strong upcoming leaders in Africa that think for the people. But the disease of corruption is still quite rampant, even in that COVID situation that you're talking about. We have read stories in the newspapers stories in various media about corrupt, tenders going out and stuff. So, and how the countries you've mentioned sort of like reacted to COVID. I think it was also about the relationships that they had with
Yeah.
certain, advanced countries, like China, for example, in the case of Zimbabwe. China, from day one, really supported Zimbabwe to start the vaccinations. I remember I had to travel to Zimbabwe to get my first vaccine. So so it's really about the flip side of that for me is that COVID taught us that we don't focus on the right things. We focused on buying or procuring. We never focused on creating our own vaccines.
Yeah.
If you look at South Africa, it's the only country now producing some stuff, but they are only sort of like replicating Johnson Johnson, the United States, just replicating the same stuff in South Africa. That's not creating your own vaccine. I'm talking about coming up with your own vaccine.
Yes.
That's African vaccine for Africans. Right now, we have people that are suffering post those vaccinations. We don't know whether they were meant for Africa and our genes, or they were meant for the people that were tested in the Western world. In many cases, it worked, as you have seen that people have developed the resistance that we need. But there are a couple of people that also suffered from this vaccination, and some that are still having post-vaccination issues with these vaccines. So I think my worry with the African leadership there is about investing in development, investing in research and development. Are we investing enough? Are we putting enough into our own production, into our own innovation, into our own stuff? We should not cry foul. If I were a Western leader, why would I export a vaccine to Africa before I finish vaccinating my people?
Your
It just
people.
doesn't make sense.
Yes.
So I expect African leaders to also think the same way. How do we fund these universities to make sure that they focus on research and develop these things? If we do not have enough lecturers who can do these things, let's bring the lecturers from the Western world to do the stuff here and develop our own people to develop these vaccines. So I just don't understand why a vaccine has to be shipped and not developed here. And when we're in a crisis like we had money to buy, but we had no money to develop anything.
Wow.
We had no money to invest in research and development around vaccination. So that's, for me, is where the challenge is and the focus is wrong. Yes.
When we discuss this concept of corruption and so on, I've often thought that the basis is not having the abundance mentality as a leader, knowing that you have enough and there's enough to go about instead of hoarding things. And same thing what you're talking about now, knowing that we can empower our own people and seeing our own worth. I think maybe that might also be an issue, that we don't see the worth and the capacity that we as Africans have.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this mentality of greediness. You can only drive one car at a time. You can only put one pair of shoes at a time. And this is how God created us. I think if some people could drive 10 cars at one time, they would probably do that. But corruption just pushes you, and this greed just pushes you into doing things that are not sensible, that don't make sense to me. And usually when you become an African leader, by the time you get there, you probably have experienced a lot of these things already. You have driven good cars, you have, traveled, you have... it's very unlikely that you just move from the village and become a leader or African leader or head of state. They would have experienced already a lot of these things. So to get in there and forget the people that you got in there to take care of is really unfortunate. And I'm glad that Botswana continues to be a shining star in Africa. The sovereign rating that we enjoy in Botswana is not anywhere else in an African country. So I think we need to continue to be on that positive trajectory as far as demonstrating good leadership, inclusiveness, trying to bring everyone, the poor, into the mainstream economy. It's difficult, but I think the government is trying.
Yeah.
in that direction. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So because of globalization, African leadership style, African leadership in itself is evolving. So how do you kind of foresee how African leadership will evolve in shaping the continent's future on economic development and so on, and especially with digitization, we have access to so much now.
I think the time is now for African leaders to really demonstrate their ability to move Africa to the next level. We have abundance of minerals, any resource that mineral resource that you can think of. The biggest producers of those is Africa. Look at diamond. Where
Exactly.
does Botswana rank in terms of diamond production in the world? Now with what's happening in Russia, probably we were second highest producer of diamonds. So that means we can take that first place in terms of diamond. Lithium. Look at Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe, yeah.
Discovered lithium. Lithium is probably Zimbabwe is the biggest producer now of lithium in the world. And don't forget that they've got these other minerals
No.
like gold, diamond as well in Zimbabwe. So South Africa, we've known South Africa for gold for many years. Go up into North Africa, you will find that there's even more oil, oil and gas, and all sorts of things. We have everything we need in Africa. So I think it's time that African leaders now exploit these resources for the people and not for themselves and their families. I think it's just about now thinking how do we make sure that as Africa there's intra-Africa trade, not getting things out and going to, letting things go to Europe in a raw state, and then when they come back, the price
This
is
is
10
high,
times higher
yeah.
than what it was. So I think the thinking needs to change. On the social front, it's quite simple for me. Let's provide people the basic stuff. Why
Yes.
should people not have health facilities? Why should people not be exposed to better education systems? Why should why should our kids know that the head of a grasshopper is called what? How does that help with anything? I think we need to revamp our
Yes,
education curriculum
absolutely.
because as we speak, we're talking about things to me that do not quite add value. I always, when I interact with my kids' teachers, I always ask, how come money is key in our life? But I don't see any subject talking about money. If you go from grade 1 to grade 7, you'll find that there's no subject that talks about money. You talk about money when we now start talking about economics, which is later in your life. But this is key in whatever we do. You and me were sitting here, it's about money. BIC exists here, it's about money.
Yeah.
The government issues you're complaining about, it's about money.
Money, yeah.
But no one really wants to teach about money. So, so why don't we coin our own education system that's relevant to us, that respects our values and the things that we want to see. But it's so westernized, those colonial legacies I was talking about, that if you don't pass mathematics by 99%, then you're not good. Then we are given this mentality and this sense that we are not better people than the
Yes.
Western world. So I think it's these social things really should be availed to people. The social inequalities that are there are the source of problems that we see in Africa. There's need for infrastructure development. We can see it.
Yes.
If you go to Europe, you can almost plan your movement around the city. The train or the bus picks me at this time. It comes in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I'm not sure you can do that in Africa. Even a train or a plane, for that matter, you're not sure if it's coming or not coming. So I think it's just about how focused we are on and how disciplined we are on some
Yeah.
of these things, and then we end up blaming other external factors. But the issue is really with us. We need to just be disciplined and do what we have to do as a people.
Yeah.
So Africa, I think, it's ready to take its place in the global economic development, and African leaders just need to focus on these cultural social and economic factors that affect their people.
Right. And inherently, we as Africans are very collaborative and self-sufficient. We have our own resources, like you was talking about. So when you see African leaders within various organizations or even just businesses fighting against each other, but not fighting those who are trying to take our resources away from you, what comes to mind?
I think it's said that we think that we still have brothers and sisters that think that associating with the Western country or whatever makes me, put me in a better position
Yeah.
or makes me look better rather than supporting my own. I always talk about the Indian mentality and why they're successful.
Okay.
What I call the Indian mentality is that in the Indian community, it's very rare that the business will be given to you if there's another Indian who can do it.
Yes.
It's very rare that they'll go to a Motswana doctor or Zimbabwean doctor when there's an Indian doctor who can do the same stuff. That is support to each other.
Shared
That is
wealth.
keeping wealth within the same communities. But we tend to think that actually it's better if a foreigner goes to South Africa and sees a white guy to do an op and
Yeah.
not get an op from Tsepo in Botswana. That's the mentality we need to start changing. That's the lack of cooperation and collaboration that's lacking. So when you ask me how do I feel, I think from my explanation you can tell that I feel deeply aggrieved when I don't see success because we are busy dishing out the support that we could give to each other to some other places. So with the numbers we have, with the mentality, the Indian mentality I talked about, if it was to apply to the Africans, it would be somewhere else.
So be far.
But we always tend to think that some people call it PhD, pull him down instead of push him up. So I think that's where the challenge is
Yeah.
with Africans at the moment. Yeah.
And how can we build capacity within ourselves, or even enable ourselves to unveil what's the potential already within us as African leadership, from a junior level to an executive level?
I think it's more about workshopping about these things in the seminars. Part of this, some of the work that you're doing, the podcasts and stuff. I think people who really want to learn, there's a lot of learning that can happen out there. With at a very minimal cost, if any costs, in terms of access to information on various platforms. So I think people need to educate themselves. They need to really look for knowledge, not to wait for knowledge, because knowledge will not come to you. It's like a muscle. You see, the brain is like a muscle. If you do nothing about your muscle, you don't expect it to build. And then if you don't exercise your brains, you don't expect to be sharp and to engage in conversations that are meaningful, because you're not engaging your mind more often. So the mind cells die. So you're basically walking coffin if you don't learn and
Yeah.
learn new things. So my thinking is that we need to emphasize on, especially in the business environment, to take our people through real coaching,
Yes.
real, workshops and seminars where we actually, share our experiences and bring in people who have experienced different situations and environments, so that people learn from them and understand some of the missteps that they might face in their leadership life.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, in wrapping up this particular topic, what would you say is the heart of African leadership?
What would I say?
Is the heart or the core principle of African leadership?
I think is the heart of African leadership is the common sort of like common mentality that when I say common, I mean community mentality, that we need to work together. We need to do things for our people. We need to be seen to connect with the with the people that we work with. I think, like we said earlier, it is really about the soul, the heart, and the mind. If you lose any one of the three
Yeah.
in terms of African leadership, then you have lost it. So if you're focusing on the three, you are likely to be considerate of the social situations of people, the economic status of people, the inequalities that are inherent in them, the cultural values that are deep-seated in their communities. So I think that really what sort of like guides the African leadership.
Absolutely brilliant. Wow, I got goosebumps just listening to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had an amazing time, and I hope you had a great time as well. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.